Happy Sunday. It's my favorite day, 8 p.m. premiere. And on Sunday, we read fairy tales. And if you're new here, you're probably thinking, what? And a lot of people have wandered into the chat and been like, so she's just reading stories? Yes and no. Because we all have this idea of what a fairy tale is. And unless you've really studied it or read them yourself with a critical mind, you don't really know what a fairy tale is, because so many of us have been trained and propagandized to think fairy tales and Disney, right? Or fairy tales and a silly story. Sometimes you'll be in a conversation and people will be like, oh, that's just a fairy tale. And I probably used that expression before I started studying them. We just read one time just to kind of see, oh, what's the difference? Because I was dabbling in the idea of what we now call here literary archaeology, where I was reading speeches by Paul Harvey. We did a couple of poems from maybe the 1800s. Started to realize there's something there, something that relates to red pill. Red pill politically, red pill as it's known in the relationship and dating world. And at the end of the day, all that means is truth and being awake, because that's what it was in the movie The Matrix in 1999, which for me, sorry, that's Lola. She's my little dog, my boss, my director, mascot, and she wants attention. But I have bribed her with treats up on the couch, so hopefully she'll make an appearance later, not drive us too crazy. But anyway, when she distracts me, I'm reminded to ask you guys, please like the video, especially this one, because people don't know about literary archaeology and the truth that's hidden and why it's hidden. Because you guys know how many men are out there that have not been red-pilled. Because everything in society fights against truth, real truth. Because it serves the state, it serves the overlords. And so we have to literally dig for it. Well, maybe it's not literally. We have to dig. And it's not that this has been banned. It's just that, like I said, the definition of fairy tale has been changed. And we know, like 1984, the book by George Orwell, they changed the definition of words so that they change what you think. Well, we have changed what we think about fairy tales, because we find a lot of witches and evil stepmothers and evil mothers-in-law. And isn't that interesting? That so many times the villain is female. What kind of message could we be sending? The opposite of sugar and spice and all things nice. And also that piety goes with beauty, and that without it, is the woman really beautiful? The Grimm brothers would probably say no. And one more thing, the Grimm brothers, the reason why they collected these stories and published them in 1812 and 1815, because you should ignore the ones that were published later because they were changed for the reasons I've said. They knew that their culture was changing back then, and they knew that wasn't a good thing. So we read them today for the same reasons they published them in the first place. So let's get into it. Today we have Sweetheart Roland. Now, I've not read these ahead of time because I want to experience them for the first time with you guys. If I've already read them, it loses something, I think. All right. Once upon a time, there was a mother who had one daughter of her own and hated her stepdaughter because she was 1,000 times more beautiful and better than her own. Notice better. She wasn't beautiful. She wasn't better because she was beautiful. I'm going to take a leap of faith and say that that's character. Because that was a thing once upon a time. One time, the stepdaughter wore a beautiful apron that the other daughter liked and coveted so much out of envy that she told her mother she wanted the apron and insisted that she get it for her. There's the theme of coveting, which is obviously not good. We're not taught that in our day and age because that would get in the way of materialism and keeping up with the Joneses, which is what, the powers that be would rather. That's what they encourage. "Oh, be quiet, my dear child," said the mother. "You shall have it soon. Your stepsister has long since deserved to die. And tonight, I want you to get into the rear of the bed and push her toward the front. Then I'll come when she's asleep and chop off her head." YouTube's going to love this. Just reading fairy tales. But the stepdaughter had been standing in the corner and had overheard everything. So she let the wicked daughter climb into bed first so she could lie down on the far side. Whoops. Why does she do that when you guys are watching? I think she just wiped out. I swear she doesn't do that when you're not watching. I promise. Oh my gosh. So she let the wicked daughter climb into bed first so she could lie down on the far side. But after she fell asleep, the other beautiful sister pushed her toward the front and took her place in the rear of the bed. Uh-oh. During the night, the old woman crept into the room. She felt around to see if someone was actually lying up front. Then she gripped an axe with both hands and began chopping until she chopped off her own offspring's upper appendage. I hope that's good enough. My gosh. After she had left the room, the maiden stood up and went to her sweetheart, whose name was Roland, and knocked at his door. Aw. Oh my goodness. "Listen," she cried out. "We must flee in haste. My stepmother killed her own daughter and thinks she actually killed me. When the sun rises and she sees what she's done, I'll be lost. So I've taken her magic wand to help ourselves along the way." This is exciting. Sweetheart Roland stood up, and before they left, they went first to take the upper appendage that's no longer alive of the stepsister and let 3 drops of arterial fluid drip from it onto the floor, 1 in front of the bed, 1 in the kitchen, and 1 on the stairs. Then they ran off. I do have a treat. Goodness gracious. You think she's starving. Don't distract us anymore, Lola. Oh my goodness. All right, so they've dripped the arterial fluid in random places. We don't know why yet. The next morning, when the mother got up, she called her daughter. "Come, you'll get the apron now." But the daughter didn't come. "Where are you?" "Here I am, on the stairs, sweeping," answered one of the drops of arterial fluid. Whoa. The old woman went out, but saw no one. "Where are you?" "Here I am, in the kitchen, warming myself," the second drop of arterial fluid replied. The old woman went into the kitchen, but she found no one there. Oh my gosh. Where are you? Here I am, in bed, sleeping. You have had enough. Oh my gosh. The old woman ran into the room where she saw her own daughter on her bed, swimming in arterial fluid. She was horrified and realized that she had been deceived. All at once, she burst into anger and rushed to the window. Since she was a witch, she could see quite far into the world, and she spotted her stepdaughter fleeing with her sweetheart. They were already far away, so she put on her 7-league boots, and it didn't take her long before she had overtaken them. However, the maiden knew through the magic wand that they were being followed and turned herself into a lake. What? Turned herself into a lake, and her sweetheart Roland into a duck, then swam on it. Oh my gosh, when the stepmother arrived, she sat down on the bank of the lake and threw breadcrumbs to lure the duck to shore. Does she know? But it was all in vain, and by nightfall, the old woman had to return home without having accomplished anything. Meanwhile, the maiden and her sweetheart regained their natural forms and continued on their way. At daybreak, however, the witch pursued them once more. Then the maiden changed herself into a beautiful flower growing in the middle of a briar hedge, and her sweetheart was transformed into a fiddler. When the old woman arrived, she asked the fiddler whether she could pluck the beautiful flower. Of course, he answered, and I'll play a tune while you're doing it. So she crawled into the hedge to pluck it, and as she touched the middle of the hedge, he began to play a tune, and she was compelled to dance and dance without stopping. So that the thorns tore her clothes from her body and scratched her so badly that arterial fluid flowed, and she ceased to exist from the wounds. Wow. Now they were both free, and Roland said to the maiden, I want to go to my father and arrange for the wedding. In the meantime, I'll turn myself into a red stone and stay here and wait until you come back. Roland departed, and the maiden stood in the field as a red stone and waited for her sweetheart a long time. But he didn't return. And had forgotten her. Oh no. When he failed to come back, she grew sad, turned herself into a flower, and thought, someone will surely come along and trample me. Because we used to teach women, little girls, loyalty, patience, and devotion. So, if it's not him, it's no one. And I know it's not over. That is so foreign for us today, because it is like that is just not the case. Like, women want to trade up. Hypergamy is real. But a shepherd found the flower, and since it was so beautiful, he took it with him and tucked it away in a chest. From that time on, amazing things began to happen in the shepherd's cottage. When he got up in the morning, all the work would already be done. The sweeping, dusting, a fire in the hearth. At noon, when he came home, the food was cooked and the table set and the meal served. Like a woman's duties, you know? Like a woman's duties. I love this. I love it. He couldn't figure out how all this was happening, for he never saw a living soul in his cottage. Though it pleased him very much, he eventually became frightened and went to a wise woman for advice. She told him that there was magic behind all this, and he should get up very early some morning and watch for anything that moved in the room. Then, if he saw something, he was to quickly throw a white cloth over it. The shepherd did as she told him. And on the following morning, he saw the chest open and the flower come out. Immediately, he threw the white cloth over the flower, and suddenly the transformation came to an end, and the beautiful maiden, whom her sweetheart Roland had forgotten, stood before him. The shepherd wanted to marry her, but she said no, because she only wanted to serve him and clean his house. Oh, my gosh. Oh my gosh. Soon thereafter, she heard that Roland was about to hold a wedding and marry another maiden. It was customary at this event for every person who attended it to sing. So the faithful maiden also went. But she didn't want to sing until at last she was compelled to do so. As she began to sing, Roland recognized her right away, jumped up, and said that she was his true bride, and he didn't want anyone else but her. So he married her, and her sorrows came to an end while her joy began to thrive. She stayed faithful. And in the meantime, she was at the shepherd's. He was kind to her, plucked her, kept her safe in the trunk, right? And she served him. She served him as a woman, providing value, but saying, I can't marry you. Because why? Because her heart belonged to another. Because it wouldn't be fair to the shepherd, right? Because she could marry him and, that'd probably improve her life in some way or another, but it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't even be right to Roland, even if Roland had forgotten her and never thought of her one more time. I think in principle, it's a betrayal. Just because if Roland forgot, that doesn't mean, okay, well, oh well. But we see that today so much. Just throwing valuable things away, throwing people away, just moving on. And when you do that, you devalue yourself, the person you were with, the idea of a relationship at all. I really think it's not just hookup culture that's bad, in my opinion. And it's taken me a while to come to this, but you just keep peeling back the layers and you come, I think, to a place where you say, I think even having any type of relationships where you break up, you try another one. You break up, you try another one. Even if you were celibate and you just say you just kissed or what have you, I still think that's bad. Because what are you actually practicing? You're practicing breaking up. It's like I said, even if you're celibate, it's worse if you're not, but it's like Velcro, right? It gets less sticky. I think that's how we are. I think that it's even more true for women, but I definitely think it's true for both. And this story could inspire children to think differently, to seek the one. And that's the one, and that's it. We are told in society, through movies, TV, everything like that, articles, God, we've read some articles on here. We are just force-fed that that's not healthy. Getting married young is unhealthy. Not having enough experience is unhealthy because then you're not going to know what you want. Well, then we're wanting the wrong things, aren't we? We're not valuing the right things. If we have to figure out what it is that we want, like it's like trying different flavors of ice cream. Pretty soon, you're going to be sick to your stomach. That was a great one. All right. The next one is the golden bird. A certain king had a pleasure garden, and in this garden there was a tree that bore golden apples. Soon after the apples became ripe, one was found missing the very first night. The king became furious and ordered his gardener to keep watch under the tree every night. So the gardener commanded his eldest son to guard the tree, but he fell asleep at midnight, and the next night another apple was missing. So the gardener had his second son stand guard the following night, but he too soon fell asleep at midnight, and in the morning yet another apple was missing. We read one like this either last week or the week before, and it was pears on the tree, and it was 3 sons like this. But it wasn't this one, just a similar theme. Let's see where this one goes. And in the morning, yet another apple was missing. Now the third son wanted to stand guard, but the gardener wasn't satisfied at first. Finally, he relented, and the third son lay down under the tree and watched and watched. And when the clock struck midnight, the air was filled with noise, and a bird came flying. It was made entirely out of gold. And just as it was about to pick off an apple with its beak, the gardener's son stood up and hurriedly shot an arrow at the bird. However, the arrow didn't harm the bird other than costing it a feather as it quickly flew away. The next morning, the golden feather was brought to the king, who immediately assembled his counselors, and everyone declared unanimously that a feather like this was worth more than the entire kingdom. "One feather alone won't help me," said the king. "I want and must have the entire bird." So the king's eldest son set out and was certain he'd find the golden bird. After he had gone a short distance, he came to a forest, and on the edge of the forest sat a fox. So the prince grabbed his rifle and took aim, but the fox started speaking. "Don't shoot. I'll give you some good advice if you hold your fire. I already know where you want to go. You want to catch the golden bird. This evening, you'll come to a village where you'll see 2 inns facing each other. One will be brightly lit with a great deal of merrymaking inside. Don't go into that place. Instead, go into the other inn, even though it looks dismal." I think we've read this one before, but I think we read it in that book. The one from the 20th century. So guess what? We're going to keep reading the one from the 19th century because it could be very different. And the fact that I didn't recognize it yet probably means it is. So there are 2 inns facing each other. One's full of merrymaking, the other one looks boring. But the son thought, "How can an animal give me sensible advice?" And he took his rifle and pulled the trigger. However, his shot missed the fox, who stretched out his tail and dashed quickly into the forest. Then the eldest son continued his journey, and by evening he arrived at the village where the two inns were standing. In one of them, there was singing and dancing, while the other appeared rather dismal and shabby. I'd certainly be a fool, he thought, if I were to stay at that dismal-looking inn instead of staying at this beautiful one here. So he went into the cheerful inn, lived to the hilt like a king, and forgot the bird and his home. He went to the one full of some sinning, I think, because, sinning is exciting, and being good is boring. At least that's what people think. And that's what, the people who are enjoying their sin and living it up at the exciting inn, that's what they'll say, because they don't want to stop. After some time had passed and the eldest son still hadn't returned home, the second son set out, and he too encountered the fox and received good advice. But when he came to the two inns, he saw his brother at the window of the inn in which there were sounds of carousing, Carousing. All right, Rojas, let us know what that word is. And I know there'll be like 10 of you that are telling me what it is, and I'm grateful for that. Carousing. Oh my God, I'm so dumb. Oops, it's embarrassing. Carousing. I guess I've never seen it written. Okay. When his brother called out to him, he couldn't resist and whiled his time away in good cheer. Some more months passed by, and now the youngest son also wanted to set out into the world, but his father refused to let him go. The king was most fond of him and was afraid that he would have a mishap and wouldn't return. I also want to say that, having fun, enjoying yourself, enjoying like hedonistic pleasures will derail you from your mission. It will derail you from your purpose. Your purpose, as I would teach children if I was reading this to them, your purpose shouldn't be seeking pleasure, because although that might be enjoyable, it is not fulfilling. And it's selfish. At the end of the day, it's selfish because you don't have any responsibility to anyone else. You know what I mean? You're not serving anyone else. And people who just want to seek pleasure might say, well, that doesn't sound good, but you don't understand the way God made it. He made it so it comes back. It comes back to us when we're serving selflessly. It fulfills us. It strengthens our spirit. It really does. I think that's a big reason why people are so depressed nowadays, because they don't have a servant's heart and they don't have gratitude. A servant's heart requires humility and selflessness, and we're greatly lacking that in society because it wasn't taught to us as children. Actually, the opposite has been taught to us. If you think about Disney's fairy tales and the princesses, they just kind of won the lottery, right? Like, oh, you'll get yours. And that is not what these fairy tales are about at all. All right. The king was most fond of him. Okay, however, his son wouldn't leave him in peace, so that the king finally permitted his son to depart. At the edge of the forest, he too encountered the fox, who gave him the good advice. Since the young prince was good-natured and didn't attempt to harm the animal's life, the fox said, "Climb on my tail and you'll get there more quickly." Oh, I love it. No sooner did the prince sit down on the fox's tail than the fox began to run. And the fox went over sticks and stones so swiftly that the wind whistled through the prince's hair. When they came to the village, the prince got off the tail, followed the fox's good advice, and without looking around, that's right, don't even tempt yourself. Do not tempt yourself. Entered the shabbier inn and spent a quiet night there. The next morning, he found the fox on his way once again, and the fox said to him, "If you go straight ahead, you'll eventually come to a castle. In front of this castle, there's a whole regiment of soldiers lying on the ground. But don't worry about them, for they'll all be snoring and sleeping. Enter the castle and proceed until you come to a chamber where the golden bird is hanging in a wooden cage. Nearby, you'll also find a magnificent golden cage hanging just for decoration, but be careful not to take the bird out of its shabby cage and put it into the good one. Otherwise, you'll be in for trouble." Upon saying these words, the fox stretched out his tail again, and the prince sat down on it. The fox raced over sticks and stones so swiftly that the wind whistled through the prince's hair. When the young man arrived in front of the castle, everything was as the fox said it would be. He entered the last room, saw the golden bird sitting in its wooden cage, and also a golden cage beside it. The 3 golden apples were lying about the room as well. The prince thought it would be ridiculous to leave the beautiful bird in the plain ugly cage. Oh no! So he opened the door, grabbed hold of the bird, and put it into the golden cage. As soon as that happened, the bird uttered a dreadful cry that caused the soldiers to wake up, and soon they took the prince prisoner and led him to the king. Oh no. He didn't obey. He didn't resist temptation this time. He resisted it before, and he was kind to the fox, but now we have fallen a bit here. The next morning, he was brought before the court, and after he confessed to everything, he was sentenced to death. However, the king said he would spare his life under one condition. The prince had to bring him the golden horse that ran faster than the wind. If he did, he would receive the golden bird as his reward. Well, that's sure different. You're either going to meet your end or, you're going to get everything. Goodness me. This is a good one too. Okay. The prince set out, but he was depressed inside. All of a sudden, however, the fox stood in front of him again and said, "You see, all this happened because you didn't listen to me. However, if you listen to me, I'll give you advice once again. This time, how to get the golden horse. It's redemption. It's redemption. It's forgiveness. It's grace. I'll give you advice once again. This time, how to get the golden horse. First, you must go straight ahead until you come to a castle where the horse is standing in the stable. There will be stable boys lying on the ground out front, but they'll be snoring and sleeping, and you'll be able to lead the golden horse out of its stall with ease. But make sure you put the poor wooden and leather saddle on the horse and not the golden one that's hanging nearby. This is a theme. Do not give in to temptation. All that glitters is not gold. Yep. Then the youngest son sat down on the fox's tail, and the fox raced over sticks and stones so swiftly that the wind whistled through the prince's hair. Shortly after, everything happened as the fox said it would. The grooms snored and were holding golden saddles in their hands. When he saw the golden horse, he felt sorry for it and thought it would be a shame to put the poor saddle on it. Oh no, not again. So he decided to give the horse the one that he deserved. Deserved? That's not a good word. I mean, we have that idea way too much in today's society. I deserve this. We don't deserve anything. Honestly, as Christians, we know we deserve the worst. And the reason why we're not going to get that in the end is because a man sacrificed himself 2,000 years ago out of love and, out of love. So that's what we believe. Yet, just as he was about to take a good saddle from one of the stable boys, the groom woke up, as did the others. Again, he was captured and thrown into prison. The next morning, he was sentenced to death again. However, his life would be spared, and he would be granted the golden horse and the bird as well if he fetched the marvelously beautiful princess. I feel like this is going to get harder and harder to do these things, and he has now another chance after he has continuously failed. And thank God that is what we have, because we continuously fail. Oh, Rojas, I can't wait to see what you say. And Snowy Owls, all of you guys. I'm like, ooh, it's going to be so good. The chat is going to be so good. So the son sadly set out on his way, and soon the old fox was standing there again. Why didn't you listen to me? You'd have the bird and the horse by now. Nevertheless, I'll give you advice one more time. Now go straight out, and toward evening, you'll come to a castle. At midnight, the princess will go to the bathhouse to bathe herself. You're to go inside and give her a kiss. By doing this, you'll be able to take her with you, but don't allow her to take leave of her parents. Wait a minute. Okay. You're to go inside and give her a kiss. By doing this, you'll be able to take her with you, but don't allow her to take leave of her parents. So you'll be able to, but don't do it? Is that what he's saying? The fox stretched out his tail and raced over sticks and stones so swiftly that the wind whistled through the prince's hair. When he arrived at the golden castle, it was just as the fox had said it would be. At night, he gave the princess a kiss in the bathhouse, and she was ready to go with him. But she implored him with tears to let her say farewell to her parents. At first, he refused. But when she kept on weeping and fell at his feet. Good job, princess. He finally gave in, but no sooner did the princess approach her father than he and everyone else in the castle woke up and the young man was taken prisoner. Yeah, because you're not supposed to leave with her, right? You're not supposed to. He failed again. Oh, it's frustrating, right? It's so frustrating. This must be how God sees us, right? Watching us like, oh, he did it again. He did it again. He did it again. I'm just kidding, because I know God is forever understanding and full of love and grace. But I mean, it's funny to think like he's looking down and we're just bumping into walls repeatedly, even though we're clearly told not to. And this is how I would explain it to children. So he's prisoner again. What's the fox going to do? Is it over? The next morning, the king said to him, "You may have my daughter only if you remove the mountain." Move mountains? So funny. "Remove the mountain that's lying in front of my window and blocking my view. You have 1 week to perform the task." I mean, it's getting harder and harder. If he would just do what he's told and resist the temptation before him, then, because our ways are not the best ways. He's thinking, well, the horse should have this saddle. Well, the bird should be in this cage. Well, that's your way. And It's not the best way, and it just leads you to peril. Not to say some kind of prosperity preaching where, oh, if you're good, only good things will happen to you. That's not the way it works, but clearly you can make things worse for yourself. Personal accountability. I don't see that a lot these days, especially in the lady folk. Just saying my reporting my observations. Okay. This mountain, however, was so huge, so very huge, and it would have taken all the people in the world to carry it away. And after he had worked for 7 whole days, 7, so many biblical themes, just running through it. That's why they say fairy tales are silly, because they're very serious. He had worked for 7 whole days and saw how little he had accomplished. He became very worried. However, on the evening of the 7th day, the fox appeared and said, "Go lie down and get some sleep. I'll do the job for you." Oh my gosh. Okay. The next morning, when the young man awoke, the mountain had vanished. So he went cheerfully to the king and told him that the mountain had been removed, and he was now to give him his daughter. So the king had to do this, and the two of them now set out together. He worked for 7 days, even though knowing it would take all the people in the world. He still put in those 7 days, toiling and toiling. The fox saw this and said, "I'll do it. You can't." You know what we can't do? Earn our way to heaven. You know what we can't do? Be good enough. But somebody else did it so that we don't have to. This one is really getting to me. This is so moving. Oh, these are truly treasures. The story continues. I have to be able to see. Okay. Okay. All right. So they set out together. However, the fox came and said, "Now we must have all 3, the princess, the horse, and the bird." So you have to finish your tasks, right? He made promises. "Yes," said the young man, "if you can do all this, but it will be difficult for you." "If you only listen, things will work out," the fox replied. Now when you come to the king, who demanded the marvelously beautiful princess, tell him, "Here she is." There will be enormous rejoicing. So mount the golden horse that they must give you and shake hands with everyone and say goodbye. Make sure that the beautiful maiden is the last person. And when you have clasped her hand, swing her up to you in one motion and gallop away. If we read this one before, it wasn't all this at all. This one's a little long, but it's not that much longer. Hang in here with me, you guys. This is so good. Everything went as planned, and the fox spoke once more to the young man. "Now, as you approach the castle where the golden bird's being kept, I'll remain with the princess before the gate. Then ride into the castle courtyard. They'll see that the golden horse is the right one, and so they'll carry out the golden bird. You remain sitting and tell them you want to see if the bird is the right one. As soon as you have the cage in your hand, you race away." Everything went well, and as soon as he had the bird, the princess got on the horse again, and they continued to ride through the vast forest. Then the fox came and said he wanted the young man He wanted the young man to shoot him dead and cut off his head and paws. However, the young man absolutely refused. Well then, said the fox, at least I'll give you one last piece of advice. Beware of two things. Don't buy flesh that's bound for the gallows, and don't sit on the edge of a well. That's not so difficult, if that's all there is to it. I would say that's never all there is to it. There's always something tempting, pulling you away from what you should do. So now the young man continued his journey with the beautiful maiden until he finally came to the village where his two brothers had remained. All at once, there was a great commotion and uproar. So he asked what was going on and was told that two men were about to be hanged. When he came closer to the scene, he saw that the men were his brothers, who had committed all sorts of terrible acts and had squandered all their possessions. Yeah, they fell into a life of sin. They went straight into that first temptation and they never got away from it. They never repented. The third son made mistakes, but was repentant. I think that's why he went forward and was depressed. I don't think it was just he was bummed out that he didn't get what he wanted. I think he was disappointed in himself, and it was, it was regret for not making the right decision. And the brothers just didn't, they seemed to revel in it. Oh, can't they be pardoned in any way? The young man said. No, unless you're willing to spend your money for these crooks and buy their freedom. The prince didn't think twice about it and paid what they demanded. His brothers were set free, and he continued the journey in their company. When they came to the forest where they had first met the fox, it was cool and lovely there, and the two brothers said, "Let's go over to the well and rest a while. Uh-oh, we could also eat and drink." The young prince said yes. Uh-oh. And during their conversation, he forgot the fox's warning and sat down on the edge of the well. And and not suspecting any evil doing, but the two brothers pushed him backwards down into the well, took the maiden, the horse, and the bird, and went home to the king. "We've managed to capture all this, and we've brought you everything." There was great rejoicing, but the horse refused to eat. The bird didn't sing, and the maiden sat and wept. Meanwhile, the youngest brother lay down in the well that fortunately was dry, and even though he hadn't broken any of his arms or legs, he couldn't find his way out. Meanwhile, the old fox came once again and scolded him for not listening, because otherwise this would not have happened. "Nevertheless, I can't help myself and must help you out. Grab my tail and hold on tightly." Then the fox pulled him up to the top. When they were above, the fox said, "Your brothers have posted guards who are to kill you if you cross the border." So the prince put on clothes of a poor man and succeeded in reaching the king's court without being recognized. No sooner was he there than the bird began to sing, the horse began to eat, and the princess stopped weeping. Then the prince appeared before the king and revealed his brother's crime and how everything had happened. So the brothers were seized and executed, and he received the princess. Later, after his father's death, he became the king as well. Many years later, the prince went walking through the forest again and encountered the old fox. Oh my gosh. Who implored him desperately to shoot him dead and cut off his head and paws. This time the prince did it. He learned to just obey, didn't he? He learned not to question. And no sooner was it done than the fox turned into none other than the brother of the beautiful princess and was finally released from a magic spell. Wow, those are two of the best ones we've read. I might think that every week. Yeah, you've got to resist. You've got to resist temptation because the choices you make are just, they really will lead you down a path and affect the ever after. But thinking about what he did with his brothers, he didn't think twice about rescuing them. And I'm puzzled by that because was that a mistake? It was a mistake to sit on the edge of the well because the fox told him. So I don't know that it was a mistake. He said not to eat from the gallows. Maybe he wasn't supposed to save them, which is so difficult for me to fathom because those were his brothers. But were they still his brothers if they went into this life of sin and never were repentant? Were we to walk away and dust off our feet? That was just, I feel like it was almost self-explanatory the whole way through. The fox reminded me of the grace of our Lord and Savior. I know I say these things and I know like, oh, people are gonna not want to subscribe. Well, then I guess that's okay, but I'm not gonna stop speaking the truth. And this is what is in these fairy tales. This is what, whether you agree with it or you don't, this is what shaped Western culture. And it's why I don't want you to read them. They don't want you to know these truths. They don't want you to know that this is who we are. Or this is who we should be. I think I'll leave it at that. I love you guys. Hit that like button so YouTube recommends it to other people so they can get into the literary archaeology too. I don't think it's on a lot of people's radar, but I know a lot of you enjoy it, so maybe other people would too. I know I am. I'm getting as much out of it as you guys are. I almost feel selfish. So I just, please protect your peace, please, and feed your soul. This always feeds mine, and sharing it with you guys certainly does. Gives me purpose and meaning in my life. And I didn't always have it like I have it now with you guys, to be honest. I get myself going again. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one. Okay? Bye.